Dangers of cultural conditioning. What is cultural conditioning? This is a good place to start. Cultural conditioning is a process through which we absorb and interpret the influences, norms, and messaging from our environment and translate them into what we believe to be acceptable behaviors. Cultural conditioning can lead to specific behaviors considered acceptable in some cultural contexts and not in others. Eventually, these behaviors become internalized and we no longer act with conscious thought. It is my opinion that misinformation coupled with cultural conditioning supported by religious ideologies is a dangerous combination. This is glaringly obvious when analyzing the motivation and actions of a terrorist, for example, who is culturally conditioned to hate, is given misinformation by people he trusts, which is then supported by his extreme religious ideologies. As a society, we are quick to point fingers, calling these individuals brainwashed, uneducated, or crazy. Upon deep reflection, it has become clear to me that no one, including myself, is immune from the dangers of cultural conditioning. September 9th, 1986, was a very special day for me. This was the day I became a big sister. As a 6-year-old child, I was of course very excited when my mother gave birth to a healthy baby boy. I remember my father taking me to the hospital and picking me up so I could see my new brother through the glass window. I still remember the moment I saw him for the first time. I was filled with joy and overcome with an innate feeling wanting to immediately protect him. The next memory I have of my baby brother was 8 days later. We were at my uncle's house for his circumcision ceremony. The ceremony was taking place in the living room, which had a door leading to the backyard that was left ajar. I was standing right outside the door looking in. I was told what was going to happen and that it was necessary for his well-being. I couldn't see my baby brother because he was surrounded by a group of adults hovering over him in a circle. The next thing I heard was my baby brother screaming at the top of his lungs. To this day, I can still hear his screams in my head, his specific screams. It was an extremely high-pitched sound, the sound of torture. I felt very helpless as I was unable to protect him. I felt faint, and I began to quietly cry to myself. I distinctly remember thinking, what are these crazy people doing to my baby brother? Since then, I have attended at least 50 circumcision ceremonies. Attending these ceremonies became very normal for me. I attended one every time a family member or a friend had a baby boy. Following the ceremony, there was always a party. Sometimes it was a small party, other times it was a very large and lavish party. As a kid, I would run around these parties and play with my cousins. As an adult, I attended out of respect for a long-standing tradition within my culture. In the Jewish culture, circumcision is considered a covenant between Abraham and the God of the Jewish people. We are taught it is a mitzvah, a good deed, to attend the ceremony, and in fact, we are encouraged to pray during the circumcision itself. Oftentimes, you will see the women raise their hands upward with their palms open, praying to God for forgiveness of their sins. As an adult, I rationalized to myself that the visceral reaction I experienced at my brother's circumcision ceremony was nothing more than that of a young child not understanding what was going on. I dismissed my own intuition and common sense and relied on the advice of doctors in my community, claiming it was a necessary medical procedure. I was conditioned to believe that male infant circumcision is normal, but the truth is that male circumcision is not normal. There is nothing normal about strapping a baby boy to a board, spreading his legs, and cutting his genitals. I am the perfect example of how one is culturally conditioned. I started my story in September 1986. I would like to fast forward to January 2023, just a little over 2 years ago. One night in January 2023, I was scrolling through Facebook and came across an article titled, 4 New York babies get herpes from Jewish circumcision rite in the past 6 months. The article was dated February 25, 2020. I was confused as to why a baby would contract herpes from a circumcision. As I read the article, I was horrified. The article detailed what is known as metzitza bepeh. Metzitza bepeh is a controversial ritual practice in which the mohel, after removing the baby's foreskin, places his mouth on the open wound and sucks out blood by oral suction. This is repeated up to 3 times. I would like to make it clear, this practice is only done in an extremely small subset of an ultra-Orthodox community sect called the Haredis. Most rabbis denounce it, and most Jewish people have never even heard of it. This was indeed the first time I had ever heard of it. I was beyond disturbed. I proceeded to search for information regarding this horrific practice. While doing so, I came across countless articles regarding the lifelong harmful effects of circumcision, none of which I was aware of. It was always my understanding that circumcision is done in the best interest of the child's health long term. In an effort to further educate myself, I decided to do some research. I spent the next few weeks doing what I do best, researching and analyzing the facts. I read countless articles, both for and against circumcision. I watched many videos by doctors, I watched documentaries, I reviewed studies, I cross-referenced the studies, I attempted to validate the studies, and I spoke with licensed physicians. And I also researched the origins of circumcision. In the end, I came to the following conclusion. The claim that circumcision is healthier and cleaner is 100% absolutely false. And I will explain to you. And I will explain to you why. With facts, I will explain to you why. But before I do so, I would like to briefly talk about the origins of circumcision. The origins of circumcision date back thousands of years to a time when civilizations engaged in human sacrifice, animal sacrifice, and blood sacrifice. Blood sacrifice rituals, or blood rituals, are ancient religious practices that involve the offering of blood to a deity or supernatural entity. These rituals have been documented in various civilizations throughout history. Researcher Charles S. Allison traces blood rituals as far back as the Babylonians, Canaanites, and ancient nomadic tribes. In ancient Mesopotamia civilizations, blood sacrifice rituals were performed to appease the gods and to ensure fertility. In ancient Egyptian civilization, sacrificial animals were slaughtered and their blood was poured onto altars or in sacred pools. In ancient Maya civilizations, human sacrifices were offered to the sun god. In medieval times, according to Norse mythology, blood sacrifices were made to Odin and other gods. And in Celtic cultures, both animal and human sacrifices were routinely made. Although the origins of circumcision date back to a time period when blood was considered a holy form of sacrifice, some argue Jewish circumcision is not a blood sacrifice because it is not intended as a sacrifice, but rather it is considered a mark of the covenant. Assuming Jewish circumcision is not intended as a sacrifice, it is nonetheless a blood ritual, often referred to as blood of the covenant. And in fact, any man who wishes to convert into the faith, who is already circumcised, must still undergo what is called hatafat dambrit, the ritual drawing of blood. Hatafat dambrit requires drawing a small drop of blood from the area where the foreskin used to be. Before doing my research, I had no idea circumcision is a pre-medieval tribal blood ritual. However, as it turns out, some people are aware that it is. As posted by Eran Sadet, cultural conditioning is so powerful that it manipulates human instincts to act against their most basic moral foundations. But circumcision is not just a regulation of instinct. It is one of the most striking examples of making people believe they are doing something good while committing an act that in any other context would be considered a grotesque violation of human rights. I personally consider any type of blood ritual barbaric and inhumane and believe there is no place for it in today's society. As I mentioned earlier, at the end of my research, I came to the conclusion that the claim circumcision is healthier and cleaner is 100% absolutely false. I would like to now share with you some of my findings. I compiled a short list of the most relevant facts. For most of you sitting here today, none of this is going to be new, so I ask that you bear with me. But for most Americans, including myself, this information is not only new, but shocking, especially because it was ingrained in our minds that circumcision is healthier and in the best interest of the child. The following is a list of 10 undisputed facts. Undisputed fact number 1, foreskin is not a birth defect, meaning a baby boy born with foreskin is considered healthy. The absence of foreskin is a birth defect. The birth defect is called apostia, which is a congenital anomaly and is the result of a developmental issue during the formation of the male genitalia. Undisputed fact number 2, foreskin is a body part. I repeat, foreskin is a body part. Foreskin is not just an extra piece of skin, as some people say. The adult foreskin is highly vascularized and has a densely innervated bilayer tissue with a surface area of up to 90 centimeters. This is the size of approximately a 3x5 index card. The tissue is highly dynamic and biochemically functions as a gliding mechanism. During intercourse, the foreskin essentially unfolds and glides, facilitating movement, reducing friction, and retaining fluids. The foreskin is the primary erogenous zone of the male organ and is divided into 4 subsections: the inner mucosa, the ridge band, the frenulum, and the outer foreskin. The foreskin is a protective layer, much like how the eyelid protects the eye. The glands and inner mucosa are physically protected against external irritation and contaminants while maintaining a healthy, moist surface. There are also specialized immunological properties which defend against common microbes. The foreskin is an antimicrobial body part. Say it again. The foreskin is an antimicrobial body part. Undisputed fact number 3, the foreskin has a purpose and function. For the male infant, the purpose and function of the foreskin is to protect from urine, dirt, and feces. For the male adult, the purpose and function of the foreskin is to allow for self-lubrication during sexual intercourse, among other things. I spoke with a handful of doctors currently performing male infant circumcision. I asked them all the same question. Without fail, they all gave the same answer. Question: what is the purpose and function of the foreskin? Answer: there is none. An interesting side note, the lubrication industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, is the #1 promoter of circumcision worldwide. Undisputed fact number 4, infant foreskins are sold to pharmaceutical companies. The foreskin contains valuable stem cells and fibroblasts, which they use to create and sell high-end beauty products, including wrinkle-free creams. Medical entrepreneurs have made millions in profit from newborn foreskin. According to one company, the American Type Culture Collection Incorporated, headquartered in Virginia, the baby foreskin is even available in various ethnicities. Undisputed fact number 5. Circumcision is a non-therapeutic surgical procedure, meaning there is no medical necessity or illness that requires a corrective procedure. There is no disease, there is no defect that needs to be treated. It is the only surgery done in an attempt to reduce the likelihood of a potential illness that may or may not ever occur. And like in all surgeries, there are risks associated with it, including infection, injury to the urethra, erectile dysfunction, and less commonly, penile amputation. Circumcision can also cause meatal stenosis, a condition where the opening narrows and becomes too small. This would require a corrective surgery. Undisputed fact number 6. Circumcision causes permanent, irreversible damage to thousands of nerve endings, called Meissner's corpuscles. Meissner's corpuscles are in the foreskin and are a type of rapidly adapting low-threshold receptors. Their stimulation contributes to sexual sensations. Undisputed fact number 7. The studies claiming circumcision reduces the likelihood of HIV or sexually transmitted diseases are questionable at best. Not only are these studies outdated, they were mostly conducted in African countries where there is already a higher likelihood of HIV and transmitted diseases. And many of the participants who agreed to be circumcised were advised to use protection while engaging in sexual intercourse due to the open wound. These studies also lack the proper follow-up with the participants involved. We all know the only way to prevent HIV and sexually transmitted diseases is abstinence. And the best way to reduce the likelihood of HIV or STDs is to use proper contraceptives. Undisputed fact number 8. The most cited reason for circumcision by doctors today is to reduce the likelihood of urinary tract infections. So let's talk about urinary tract infections. Do you know what the chance of getting a UTI is in boys from infancy to 10 years old? 1.1 to 1.6%. If your baby happens to fall within the 1.1 to 1.6% and gets a UTI during the first 3 months of life, those are often part of a syndrome called gram-negative sepsis. Did you know that young men rarely develop UTIs? In young men, the prevalence of bacteria in the urine is 0.1% or less. Do you know what the chance of getting a UTI for an adult male younger than 50 years old is? It is approximately 5 to 8 per 10,000 men. And in the less than 2% chance that a male infant or a male adult does in fact get a UTI, the UTI either resolves itself on its own without any treatment or with a simple antibiotic. It turns out that circumcision doesn't really prevent anything. The only thing it does is prevent normal sexual functioning. Undisputed fact number 9. Circumcision is genital mutilation and deprives the child of bodily autonomy. To all my woman warriors out there who believe in my body, my choice, what about his body, his choice? Male bodily autonomy is just as important as female bodily autonomy, and child bodily autonomy should never be contingent on the child's sex. We must protect all children equally. Circumcision is a permanent alteration of the child's genitals. Thankfully, the current climate on both sides of the aisle is one that is focused on the child's right to bodily integrity. This is a bipartisan issue and should be treated as such. Undisputed fact number 10. No medical association recommends routine neonatal circumcision. And most doctors outside of the United States overwhelmingly oppose circumcision, stating it is unethical and medically unnecessary. What is deeply troubling to me are the doctors in my community. There are hundreds of doctors in my community, many of whom are highly distinguished in their field of medicine. To them, I would like to pose the following question. Why is it that you fail to join the majority of your colleagues worldwide who overwhelmingly oppose male infant circumcision, stating it is unethical and medically unnecessary? Why is it that you hold the dissenting view on this particular issue? Why is it that you would never advise a patient to amputate a healthy body part as a prophylactic measure, yet you do so with such ease when it comes to the male foreskin? The only reasonable answer is cultural conditioning, because these doctors, like myself, have been culturally conditioned to believe it is normal. And just so you know, these are some of the smartest people I know. They are too smart, in my opinion, to hold the wrong view on such a clear-cut issue. This is precisely why cultural conditioning is so dangerous. I believe that if these same exact doctors were raised in a different culture, one that did not normalize circumcision, they would be the first to resoundingly reject the practice. When history looks back upon us, the doctors currently performing male infant circumcision will be regarded as some of the most incompetent doctors of this century. I'm going to read that again. When history looks back upon us, the doctors currently performing male infant circumcision will be regarded as some of the most incompetent doctors of this century, especially in light of the fact that not too long ago, in the 1970s, doctors in the United States were performing female genital mutilation under the same false claim that it was healthier and cleaner. It is only a matter of time before the mama bears and the papa bears wake up and realize they have been lied to by doctors and so-called experts. And when that happens, there will be a lot of explaining to do. Briefly, I would like to touch upon the First Amendment, very briefly. Some may argue that male infant circumcision is inextricable from their religion and therefore is protected under the US Constitution. As an American who cherishes the Constitution and as an officer of the court, it is incumbent upon me to inform you there is no absolute right to religion. Erwin Chemerinsky, leading expert in constitutional law, commented on a case regarding female genital mutilation and said the following: "There is no absolute right to religion in the United States," noting many parents over the years have fought for the right to refuse their child medical care because of religious beliefs, but those parents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses or Christian Scientists, have consistently lost those cases. I would like to conclude with the following. I am a proud member of the Jewish community. I was raised in a traditional Jewish home, I attended a Jewish day school, and I had a bat mitzvah. I studied the Torah, the Talmud, and the Mishnah Torah. Maimonides, author of the Mishnah Torah and personal physician to the Salah ad-Din, was approximately 800 years ahead of his time when he said there is no medical benefit to circumcision. He explained that the reason for circumcision is to inflict pain on the male organ in an attempt to prevent impure thoughts or impure actions. That being said, Maimonides still appreciated the significance of the Brit Milah on the 8th day. And although I no longer agree with it, I too still appreciate the significance of the Brit Milah on the 8th day. I also understand the importance of maintaining tradition, and I believe we can maintain this tradition without injuring the baby. You can have a Brit Milah where you recite all of the prayers, announce the Hebrew name of the baby, and have a symbolic circumcision, where in lieu of cutting the baby, you cut a piece of fruit, a pomegranate, for example, which some people are now doing. Alternatively, you can have a Brit Shalom, where you recite all of the prayers and announce the Hebrew name of the baby. You can also choose to have no Brit at all, and your baby will still be a member of the Jewish community. And if anyone tries to tell you otherwise, you can tell them this: God doesn't make mistakes. People do.